Great. Okay. So first of all, fantastic to be here, and especially with the last panel of the day. That's right, with the last activity before people are able to refresh themselves this evening. Do stay around for that. I've come from the Software Sustainability Institute, so we decided that we would do a panel here today. Some of you will know us, others of you may not. We're an organisation that is dedicated to supporting research software. So we're funded by all of the UKRI research councils. We have a fellowship programme. I know there are some fellows in the audience today. We have a fellowship programme. We have annual events. We support loads of different types of training. We do lots of different activities. We've just had a funding call for software maintenance. So we're interested in basically supporting the community, both within the UK and internationally, in writing the best possible research software so that people are able to do things like share it openly and feel confident in doing that and feel confident in the software they're writing. When I say software, I should be clear here. I'm talking about, we're not just talking about very large open source code bases. We're talking about things like, R scripts or Python scripts you might write for analyzing your data. So that will be familiar to lots of people in the room. So my name's Caroline Jay. I'm the research director. So I'm interested in understanding how we write software for research and making sure that the Institute is supporting that as well as possible. And I will allow my other panel members to introduce themselves. So Phil, if we start at this end.
All right, thanks, Caroline. Okay, so my name is Phil Reed. I currently work in computer science in the eScience lab. We have flyers at the SSI table, so I'd get shot if I didn't promote those. And my role currently is a research community training manager, which means that I work with promoting, organizing documentation and training for various European community projects. And I used to be a computer science research associate, and I've worked in the library for 11 years as well, doing various bits of RA part-time work. So I've had some experience with writing bits of code for different research projects.
Excellent. So Phil, you're going to be talking about your sort of personal experience on this as well as the Institute's perspective, yes, which I think is great. Jasmine.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jasmine Foles, and I am in the Human Computer Systems group in the Department of Computer Science. I am a social anthropologist, though, so I just want to be very clear. I don't work with code myself, but for many years, I have studied software professionals, and I have specialized in researching free and open source software communities. I did my PhD research in India, looking at the ways that those communities are both similar and different to elsewhere. And last year, I undertook research here at the University of Manchester, exploratory research about the coding community here and if or how we could increase the ways in which open source software is used and open processes more generally. So I've had an abiding interest in kind of understanding the social, political, and economic aspects of FOSS communities.
Fantastic. And Aman.
Hi, everyone. I'm Aman Goyal. I've made a couple of notes so I don't forget to say stuff. But yeah, I'm a research software engineer at the University of Manchester with Research IT, so over at Kilburn. I'm also a Software Sustainability Institute fellow from 23, and I'm now currently working with the SSI as a trainer. So that's working on the training aspects that the SSI works on with Alex Nanadich, who will be here tomorrow. And again, developing like open training modules for software, for good practices, for fair practices, also data practices. So lots of different stuff there that we'll talk about. Then I'm the community manager for the Manchester Research Software community. So that's basically this local community of practice we established for anyone working with research software. But as Caroline said, the definition is not like formal research software. It's anyone who likes to, code, who's like scripted something, who has an issue, but it's basically just trying to get people together. And it's still like, we're like, what, 1.5 years down the road, but it's still sort of realizing that there's so many people to reach to at the university, so many folks in this room who we might not have reached out to yet. And last but not the least, I'm also a community member and a mentor with OLS, which is Open Life Science. And again, OLS does similar stuff. So they deliver open science training. I think we have a talk tomorrow from OLS, and they'll tell you more about it. But that's me. And my focus is, again, divided between a lot of different hats. So traditionally research software, but then there's community building, and then there's training, and then open access to research. So yeah, lots of bits and pieces here and there.
I think that is very true of lots of people who work at the Institute, actually. So when we were thinking about this panel, we had a discussion, obviously. I mean, what was the message we wanted to get across? What did we want to, what did we want to discuss with the community? And we were thinking about, so we're all cheerleaders for open research and helping people with their software and making their code open and that kind of thing. But actually, like, there are lots and lots of challenges associated with that as well. So we came up with a working title of, I want to share my research software, but... And that just remained the title as we moved forward, because we thought, that probably sums things up. So I've got on the screen here a few barriers to doing that, right? So obviously we all endeavour to make our research as open as possible, but actually sometimes, that's challenging, right? And this comes up in discussions and has done today. And so we've got things like people worrying about their code. We've got structural challenges. We've got sort of cultural challenges. And then, we've got personal perspectives. So what I'm going to do is ask my panel members, maybe for their own reflections on this, right, from either a professional or a personal perspective. So Jasmine, can I go to you first?
Sure. This was actually something that I spent a lot of time researching last year. So from a personal perspective, the people that I talked to in the university's coding community last year came up with a few persistent and pernicious barriers that kind of prevented them from opening up their code. And they can be organized into, and this will be familiar to everyone, whether they do code or not, publish or perish. So the issue is, obviously, we all have to deal with REF. We all have to publish a certain amount, whether we want to or not. Everyone's under an immense pressure to publish. The issue that I became aware of, though, while I was talking to people, is that if you open up your code in the, right when it's ready to be open, and someone else publishes something off of your code, you're going to lose the novelty. You're going to lose the opportunity to present and publish, and that could have a detrimental effect on your career. Another major issue is infrastructural support. It takes time to properly open up your code, and this is not accounted for in workload allocation models throughout the university. So another big issue is transparency, and this is mentioned up here. Now, the issue is, obviously, in an ideal world, everyone opens up their code, we all learn from each other, and we build off of it. It's all great. People are very nervous. Even people who had been, writing code for 20 years that I talked to said they still felt nervous about opening up their code. Now, if you think about a PhD student or an early career researcher and the ways in which the hierarchies of the university are putting pressure on them, this is going to be even more intense. So I think we have to take it very seriously. And then another major issue are disciplinary training and expectations. Now, this could deal with generation. There's some people who are in disciplines where they could be opening up their code or using FOSS, and they don't. And that's just because when they started, they used SPSS or whatever, and they never looked back. They don't know about alternatives. They feel like they're, that they're an old dog and they don't want to learn new tricks. The other issue is that there's a lot of people in science and even in engineering who just aren't really aware of the possibilities and opportunities of opening up code. So those are the main things that I found for individual barriers. There's institutional barriers, but we can get to them later.
No time for those as well. Thanks, Jasmine. I think that'll be familiar probably to lots of people, certainly familiar to me. Aman, do you have anything you'd like to say about this?
I think Jasmine covered a lot of the major points there. And yeah, nothing specific to add. Just one thing I can think of, like conversations we've had with the research software community. It's just like people say situated in labs or like small groups, or even like, again, like if they don't have a big team or infrastructure where it's like, okay, this is just me, or this is like, we are two people working on this code. I think the sort of very, what do I say, like conditioned and valid approach is that this is extra work, which is kind of just like, oh, it's an added, not a barrier, an added overhead. So if I need to make something open, then I have to sort of follow all the correct practices, wherein if it's closed, you have a lot more leeway with what you can put within that software in that sense. So just that sort of added overhead, I think that people feel because there's no sort of open first culture or policy affects it a lot, which again, like it's a weird one for me to answer because I am so sort of, I would say, ingrained in the community. It's very easy for me to be in that echo chamber and be like, oh yeah, like everyone I know does open source work. Everyone I know is like so pro open research and open software. And I mean, a lot of the people in this room as well, I hope so. Uh, but it's just like when you talk to people who are like doing it on a day-to-day basis, or like code might not even take primary priority for them. So it's like, again, that lens of that this is supporting my primary research, which will get me more academic sort of citations, then code takes a backseat, and then people do not want to invest as much. At least that's my perception of it.
Yeah. Very interesting. I'm sure we'll come back to that. Thanks, Aman. And Phil, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll give an example of a particular project I worked on without revealing which one it was.
Don't try to guess.
Slip me a tenner afterwards.
Yeah.
So this is when I worked in a very small team where I was carrying on a project that had previously run with data up to a certain year. But this is closed data. It is not possible to license it to share it anywhere afterwards. But it had to be organized and rearranged so multiple sources can be brought together so you could operate in one go. Okay, so since this has been done before, could I have that person's code that maybe did the work to save me time? Oh, maybe. I don't know. Who is it? Where is it? Where is that information? And I got it a few weeks later, updated the code, and so that did help eventually, but there was a barrier. But once I'd done that, I said, well, can I share what I've written? Oh, no, can't do that. Oh, well, why? Oh, well, we're not doing that. Or somebody might expose something that's wrong in the code. And oh, okay. And I didn't know when to talk to and know where to kind of consult with, because it felt very kind of closed culture generally, for some of the same reasons you mentioned about people can run off with your ideas and before you can get a chance to do that. So I kind of wish I'd known about the SSI.
Good, excellent plug. We didn't ask you to. Yeah, I mean, these things, lots of these things are very familiar to me. Not wanting to alter somebody else's code. Yeah, not wanting to. Oh, I love the one about it's much better for the science to be wrong than it is for someone to help you spot a mistake that might help us correct it. Anyway, we'll come back to that. Okay, right, so positive notes. And please be thinking of questions because we're going to come to those shortly, questions from the audience. Enablers. So let's think about this from the perspective of the SSI. So we've got skills and support, advocacy and policy, recognition and careers, community. Aman, do you want to speak to one or more of those first?
I'll try not to ramble too much on that. But yeah, like as you said, so enablers, and again, all the sort of pillars and the focus areas for the SSI, for like all the open science communities we have. So for OLS, for the Office for Open Research, for the Turing Way, for Research IT, it's just like, yeah, like having all those focuses on, say, training. So that's a big aspect where you're providing people that expertise in the first place, wherein if people don't know about licenses or people don't know about, they can get a DOI somewhere, a digital object identifier on Zenodo or like Figshare, or like basically people being not aware of the practices can be a major barrier. So training, I feel like, is like the sort of very universal thing around that, wherein again, like that is also at different levels. So recently we did this course, which was the FAIR Research Software course with the SSI. It's becoming like Better Research Software course now, but that was talking a lot about practices that you should apply to your research software than about like learning research software itself. So resources like that, and again, going back to OLS, when you talk about open science and when you talk about the kinds of thing that would help you in terms of like, okay, you have like a project with like zero sort of open practices or good practices, but that's okay. We're here to help you. And I think that support matters a lot, which sort of, again, this is slightly off topic, but makes me also think when we talk about that culture around, oh, if I open my code, or like just that thing around one, competitiveness, which is fair. Everyone is trying to look out for the best. And just also that fear that, oh, someone might take off this code or someone might misuse it. I do feel it's like very different culturally depending on the communities you look at. So I mean, again, Jasmine might know more with the Indian context as well. But I've observed that with, say, OLS trainings, wherein if you're talking to people around the global south. For them, it's like kind of the opposite problem, because if enough resources don't exist for them, they can't get in the first place. So they don't even have the choice to make it open or closed. They're trying to get those resources in the first place. And again, being in that bubble, for me, it was like, yeah, like that's an obvious thing that I would look for, say, the existing work or the existing open source development that has been done. But I remember talking to folks who didn't have the background, and they were just like sort of amazed by that idea. And they were like, oh, wow, like this exists. We didn't realize that. So just that change of culture as well, I think differs a lot. But again, like, as I said, in terms of enablers, training, and then overall just community support, I think matters a lot.
Yeah. Thanks for that, man. And I should have said software.ac.uk. That's our website. So if you want any more information on what's being discussed today. Jasmine, have you got anything you would like to add to
Yeah,
that?
I'd just like to say one thing that could be done in addition to training and those like really basic necessary enablers would be to do some lobbying at the institutional level and maybe even at the government level. And one finding, I think maybe one of the most important findings I had from the research that I did at this university is that people who are making code within the university ecosystem have chosen to work at a university for a very specific reason, because it aligns with a kind of value. People in STEM can get jobs in industry much easier than people like me, I can tell you that. But when you choose to work at a university, at least the people I talk to, and this does seem to feel very true, is that it's because they want to do something that is just very generally for the social good. That's for building on and producing knowledge. And it could be also that you can also be very competitive and care about your own career specifically, but you're choosing to be competitive within an institution that's for the overall better good. And I think that's really important. And I think that we could harness that desire to try and say, look, if we open everything up, this is actually going to help society. This is going to help other people. This is going to help the global south. This is actually something that is for betterment of society. And I think that that's just a very valuable way of trying to frame some of these discussions and lobbying within universities and within government.
Thanks, Jasmine. Really good points. And Phil, what's your perspective on this?
So for me, I think some of this is around training. Everything comes back to training in my head, in many other people's heads, and the other part is about advocacy, I think, and having language to express what you want to do, why it's good, and why other people should care as well. So we talked a lot about open today. We haven't talked so much about FAIR data. You mentioned it before. I've got a FAIR brag if anyone wants one. So, who knows what FAIR stands for? Who would like to shout it out? Nobody.
Whispering it. Got findable. Accessible.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, I'm going to go in with a policy, I'm afraid. So I'm Bill from the University of Manchester Library. People in the room, I'm sure, are aware that UKRI have their research data policy out for review, and that's going to have a much greater emphasis from what you can see on using FAIR and repositories and so on. One of the things they're bringing in is research software and code and algorithms. I wonder if there's anything that you guys can share from the SSI about how the thinking is on that already, and also where that might go, because it's a great opportunity, I think.
Anybody like to comment on that?
I just know that people are working on it because I know there was a call. If people want to contribute it, I'm not involved, so I don't know like what exactly is happening. But I know the SI is involved in, some capacity in sort of being stakeholders there. So I think there was a meeting in Birmingham last week, a couple of weeks ago, but yeah. I'm not familiar with the details.
Yeah. So we will be contributing to that. Yes, it's a work in progress at the moment. So one of the things that's interesting, actually, we were having a discussion about this at our directorate meeting earlier on today, is how we effectively, so Oscar does a really amazing job in terms of coordinating the fellows community. And one of the things that's always an open question for us, and again, we welcome feedback on this, is how to make sure that we're making the best possible use of that. So we have this community. So when we give responses to things like this, we try to kind of tap into that as much as possible. But we're now deciding, do we need another person who can help with, how do we organize this? Because it's work. But Actually, Oscar, do you want to comment on that at all in terms of coordinating communities and the challenges with that?
Yeah.
Do you want to? Oscar thought he was going to have, this session off.
Yeah,
but
I've been
anyway,
called
yeah,
out.
Sorry.
Oh. But I gave you the job of chairing, so I can sit in the audience. No, yeah. So first on the initiative that you talked about, the meeting in Birmingham. So that's an event where the SSI is actively involved in shaping that policy. That's a lot what the SSI does, and the SSI is asked a lot to contribute to those things. Why? Because through the fellowship program, for example, we've got a really good connection to the community. So we run a fellowship program every year, select about 20 people. It's been running for a while, so we've got a network of about 250 fellows at various career stages from various disciplines, backgrounds. And we push these calls out to them, like give feedback, tell us what you want. And funders go to us because we have that sort of rich, broad network of people from all different kinds of backgrounds and needs. And it is really important when these things happen to be in the room and to, put that. So it's not just the top, and it's not just, and that's what I think the conversation was about with Caroline as well. It's not just the people at the top who were giving that feedback, but for the event in Birmingham, we invited one of our fellows to go there. She's not very senior, but she's got a lot of practical experience, and that's sort of the people who are going to be affected by those policies. And that's something that the SSI really strongly does. When we make policy, we want to include people who it's going to affect. And that's one of the things that we really work hard with our fellows to get them at the table, because the SSI gets invited to the table and we make sure everyone is at the table there.
Yeah. Thanks, Oscar. And I think that's a really good point about it's so important when these policies are made, they do include the voices of people who are doing the work, people who are on the ground and so on. I think that's a really important point. Any other questions or comments? Andrew?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to follow up Justin's point. I mean, absolutely agree about the workload issue. And our university ran a staff survey recently. I can't remember the numbers off the top of my head, but I think people feeling exceptionally overworked was like in the top 3 or something like that. And I think so actually I should say, so my other role, as well as doing the open research stuff, is I'm also head of computer science. We've got a very open and transparent workload model. But I think one thing that's happened over the years is that rules have been created. There's been creep, new rules have been created, important rules, but nothing's ever been stopped. And when I sort all my colleagues by the number of hours they're effectively overworked over their contracted hours, it's just shocking. It's probably about 2/3. So what we're doing in computer science at the moment is actually going through all the rules and actually being quite ruthless in our DLT and basically just stopping doing a whole bunch of things that would be nice, but it would be nice to do them. But if they end up with colleagues, feeling stressed, becoming ill, us not being able to deliver our core mission, then it's a problem, and we shouldn't be doing those things. So I hope, I'm the eternal optimist. So I hope at a university level, those survey results will be looked at more broadly, and there will be, conversations at the top table about this, because it's absolutely critical that I want to give people time back, basically.
Thanks very much, Andrew. Any other questions?
Do you have a second question? Yo had the choice of 2.
Okay, well, I'll go back to Yo.
All right, thank you for the chance for a second question. Just thinking about reproducibility, I've seen that word thrown around a lot, and I fully agree that if I write a script, I don't know, that says 2 + 2 is 4, then I want to run it again, and I want everyone else to run it and make sure that 2 + 2 really is 4. But science isn't always that simple. And I'm worried that we get too attached to the word reproducibility. I can think of a few examples of my work that aren't reproducible and that I feel like would possibly be unethical if they're reproducible, but I'm not sure if I'm looking at this in a fair way, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Don't look at my code and tell me if it's reproducible though, please.
It's a good point. I'm trying to have a similar concept myself. I'm trying to learn about that word because there's conversations that the Office for Open Research has done throughout the year, and I'm looking at Lucy now as well. Because you, not to put you on the spot, but it comes up, some people in some research areas will say, well, reproducible doesn't make sense for me either in this case or all cases. But for a lot of people it does. Or maybe a concept would be there is something transferable from this, but you could reapply it to reduce effort or at least have that audit trail. And but you still have to have the responsibility of whoever's in charge at that point to say, well, I've got to check every aspect of this workflow because something might have changed. So responsibility is always still there. And that is perhaps a risk of making everything easier to get access to. Because, I mean, we've been through this before with search engines telling you what you want. And now with Gemini coming up with the answers that are probably a bit wrong, you've still got to, the responsibility still lies with the person in the care.
Thanks, Bill. Jasmine, did you want to comment?
Sure, yeah, no, I would just say that, yeah, of course, not everything needs to be reproducible. And in fact, sometimes it would be unethical to try and make it reproducible. Obviously, coming from a qualitative area, it's just our goals are quite different, but transferable. What you said is actually something that we can always aim for, and being transparent. I think that the key is just being very transparent about your methods. That's the key. If it could be reproducible and it makes sense, then it should be. However, there can be good reasons why it shouldn't be. And just to add to this, not all data needs to be open and free. Sometimes there's good reasons it shouldn't be. And that's fine too. I think that perhaps maybe a system where where hopefully that could be the default for most, but where there's a really reasonable way of opting out of that when it's not appropriate.
Thanks, Jasmine. Do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, don't have anything particular on reproducibility specifically, but with FAIR in general, I think I'm just reflecting on the course we did. And I think with the course, there was that emphasis that, okay, we're talking about fair research software, or we're talking about like just fairness of your data, of your code in general. It's important to not make like FAIR just like sort of a standard and a metric that you need to achieve. So it's not like a checkbox list, or it's not like, oh, this code is more fair, so this is better. That's not always true. That's not, yeah. So again, as you said, there are different metrics which might be relevant to the particular case. Another thing was that, and I mean, that's why we're changing the codes from FAIR to like better research software. FAIR does not cover everything. So it does cover a lot of, say, the data aspects of things, but there are things outside of FAIR which are still good practices. But I think, yeah, like in my head, I think it goes back to just like, it's a good practice, it's a good suggestion, but it's not like something you have to check box off or like have that thing of, oh, this code is the most fair and this thing is the most sort of reproducible. That by default does not really help the quality of the work itself. And yeah, like I guess we don't want to do the metrification, like we don't want to make it like corporate KPIs or something where it's just like, oh, you're doing it just for the sake of it, but kind of engaging with the material reasons and then probably try to do it. But yeah.
Thanks, Aman. Right, so we're going to finish in a second. So just thinking about what we're discussing today, and I'm going to ask you a question about what you think would be the single change. So somebody wants to make their software more reproducible. What is the single change that could help with that? You could answer from an SSI perspective, from a personal perspective about something they could do, from an organizational perspective. Any of those things would work. So I suppose my perspective on this, I'll offer that quickly, given they didn't know I was going to ask them that question. So just let you have a think. I suppose my perspective on this, and Jasmine has already touched on it actually, is thinking about it from the perspective of the scientific community. So one of the things I always encourage when when I'm working with PGRs and earlier career researchers is to think about, actually the reason you're doing this job is because you want to contribute to research, right? You want to contribute to the wider community. And actually trying to center that in everything you do really helps, I think, when you get bogged down in, oh, this isn't working for me. Oh, I'm not, you know, am I going to get this paper out on time? I don't know, you know, you're part of the machine. And so that doesn't take away all of the other pressures that there are, bearing that in mind, but it can help on a personal level. And I think it's always helped me in terms of thinking about, you know, when I've been making my research reproducible or working with other people to do that, that's been the thing that's helped me. Yeah, Phil.
I think for me, I'd like to say that incremental steps are okay.
Yeah.
And working towards things is fine, because it's, as we're saying, it's a lot. In some people, that might be a lot of change, and it might be barriers, might be harder to break. And I think so if you are an influencer because you have a team of people who work, I don't want to say beneath you, but you know what I mean, and making sure that they can work openly where necessary. So yeah, incremental steps.
Excellent, thank you. Aman?
Was it around the reason or like how to do it?
How? Just how?
Yeah.
How is a longer sort of question, which I could take an hour about, but it's basically, yeah, like just come to OLS, come to SSI and look at our practices.
That's an excellent answer. Thank you.
Come to Research IT. Yeah, we'll help you figure out practices. And I mean,
Yeah.
because there are so many different things, it might be a citation file or a DOI or a license or like restructuring your whole code. I did briefly want to say why, but it's like there are so many reasons, so many incentives. From a very personal perspective, it's like just disability access and just access for one is access for all.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, at least in my mind, a good reason, because that's how I came into the community via volunteering, via getting access to open spaces. And I think that's a good incentive for us to focus that, oh yeah, we bring in more people to the conversation, more people to the table. And yeah, that's a good feeling.
Fantastic, thank you. And Jasmine, finally.
Okay, I think we need pressure from the bottom and the top to make this actually happen. I think that we need to ask or demonstrate to people at leadership that this is something that we should be thinking about, and model it in your own research practices. But I think also we need to find a way of getting PGRs and ECRs, especially, the language and avenues for which to advocate for themselves and to push it up as well, which I know can be very scary. And we can't expect everyone to be able to do that on a case-by-case basis. But if we can like somehow institutionally get champions within each department who are at the ECR level, perhaps, that could help.
Thanks very much, Jasmine. And of course, that is something the SSI can help with as
Exactly.
well.
Yeah. Go to the
Perfect
SSI.
note to finish on. So do come to our stand, software.oc.uk as well for the website. And thanks very much to the panelists today, Bill, Jasmine and Aman.
Thank you, Caroline.